Hey guys, in this video I'm talking about the i4wd drive system again that is in every single Honda Talon and some of the Pioneers. I'm also going to talk about the override. So first we're going to go over how the system works and what the system actually has control over in your Honda Talon. And then we're going to talk about why you might need the override and what the override actually does. And then at the end I'll show you some testing I did a while ago playing with the override in my driveway. So first of all, let's go to the Honda website and look at their brochure. They say that the i4wd drive is the best thing since sliced bread. It is intelligent. It is the industry first brake traction control system. So let's stop there and talk about that. Brake traction control system. This is industry first for side-by-sides, but this is just a piece of automotive technology that Honda integrated into the Honda Talon platform. Toyota's had this forever. They call it A-Track. Jeep has it. The Bronco has it. It's just a form of traction control that utilizes the ABS system and the ability to have your car's traction control computer apply the brakes to get you some more traction. So no one's confused about this. I think everyone understands the way it works. Basically, your computer will look at your wheel speed sensors and see that one of your front wheels is spinning faster than the other one. It'll know that it's in a low traction condition because it knows the back wheels are also spinning. And it's going to use the brakes to apply the brakes to the wheel that's spinning too quickly to transfer torque to the wheel with more traction and hopefully get you unstuck. So it's not a locker, but it is a limited slip. A lot of companies actually call this a brake limited slip or a brake LSD type system. And it gives you a little more than three-wheel drive. So we'll call it 3.5-wheel drive for the purposes of this video. Okay, so that's the first thing we need to talk about the i4wd drive. If you keep reading down here, Honda says that it's awesome. It has all the benefits of a lock differential and none of the downsides. I really disagree with that. It gets down here and it says that you get lighter steering, higher speeds, better tracking, better turning radius. So they say it's amazing, right? And this is their brochure, so that's what you'd expect. And it is a good system for a stock vehicle. The problem is when you put big tires on this thing, you run into issues. But let's stop for a second and go over to this parts diagram and talk about the second thing that the Honda traction control system has control over. So it's not just applying the brakes, it also controls this right here. So here's your front differential. This is where your pinion gear comes in to give power to your diff. This is an electric clutch assembly. And what that can do is it lets the computer disengage and engage your front differential. Because the computer has control over this, you're not always in four-wheel drive when you think you are. You hit the i4wd drive button and the computer doesn't lock in the front diff until it thinks you need the traction. So because you're actually in two-wheel drive a lot of the time, your steering is lighter and your turning radius is better. But again, it's an automatic, user-friendly kind of thing where the computer has the control that most other vehicles give directly to the driver. So if you compare this to like an R-Max or a Pioneer, and both those machines, when you put it in four-wheel drive, it is locked in four-wheel drive until you take it out. Also, both those machines have a true front locking differential, so they're not 3.5-wheel drive, they're four-wheel drive. So I'm not a big fan of this system, and let me tell you why. So when you get in, you start putting into big mud tires, you get in a really sticky mud situation. This computer-controlled front clutch thing can disengage and engage at the wrong time. And if it does that too much, you can overheat it, it can start slipping. Not good. I'd like to have complete control of my machine. When I throw that lever and put it in four-wheel drive, I want it to actually be in four-wheel drive. And additionally, the brake LSD system we were talking about has some downsides. They say there's no downsides here, but this brake traction control system, it is going to wear your brakes out inherently, right? It's using the brakes to try to transfer torque around. Also, when you're doing that, you're generating heat from the brakes because you're applying the brakes to one wheel, and that's throwing away power. That's what brakes do, right? They convert your wheel power, your wheel torque into heat to slow the wheel down. So that's a big downside right there, especially if you're trying to run 35s on a machine that came with 28s. It doesn't really have low enough gears to do that in the first place, so this system is going to be trying to slow it down. Also, because the system's all integrated into the throttle control and everything else, the Honda will actually limit power to protect itself if it knows the front end has too much torque on it or the front clutch is going to slip. So there are certain situations where you'll actually have less torque going to the wheels because of this complicated automatic intelligent system. So what's the fix for all these downsides I just told you about? The fix is the i4wd drive override. Now what everyone gets confused about here is that it says lock, so they think it's a locker. This is as far as you could get from a locker. We'll get to that in a second. Talk about the override part of this first. So what this system does is it plugs in line with this clutch, right? And it takes control of that clutch away from your computer and your Talon and it gives it to you. So when you press your your Hess i4wd drive override button, you're giving straight battery voltage to that clutch, and it just directly locks the clutch in. The computer can no longer disengage your four-wheel drive. You're in four-wheel drive immediately. And by four-wheel drive, I mean three-wheel drive, but you get the point. Your front differential's engaged. The lock part of this is saying that it's locking it in four-wheel drive. The computer can't unlock it. It can't take it back out. Now, this system, this Hess override, also disengages your brake LSD. So once you have that switch on, you no longer have the front brakes trying to shuffle power around, so you become three-wheel drive. So from the factory, if you were 3.5-wheel drive and you add this thing in here, you press the button, now you're three-wheel drive. So it is not a locker, it's actually reducing some traction. Now how do you get that traction back? You add the torque locker. This is a real locker. This is what anyone who really hardcore rides a Pioneer i4wd drive or a Talon should have. I've run it in mine. They're awesome. I've run these in a lot of machines actually. And when you put this sucker in there, you're going to know the difference. So when you hit your override button and this thing locks in, it is locked. You can barely steer. It wants to go straight. It feels just like an R-Max or a Pioneer with the front diff locked because it's a true locker. So that's my little blurb about how the system actually works. I think the biggest confusion is people see the word lock in the title for the override and they think it's a locker. It's not. It actually gets rid of your brake LSD. And I think another big part of the confusion is that people don't understand that the i4wd drive system has control over this clutch. The i4wd drive system doesn't just do the brakes. It also does your front end engagement. So now I'm going to show you some footage I made a while ago testing out the Hess four-wheel drive mod in my driveway. Right now, we're not in override, but we are in regular i4wheel drive. And you can see that I can spin this wheel nice and slow continuously, and the other wheel's spinning the same direction, right? Spinning both backwards. And that means that I'm not actually locked in. If you look back there, you can see I'm not spinning the drive shaft, which means that it's open. But watch, if you go real quick, it'll decide that it wants to lock it in. See that? And that's because it's paying attention to the speed of both the axles and stuff. Then once it locks in, when it decides it wants to, then you have your differential action where that wheel will start going back the opposite direction of this one. But it decides when it wants to do it, right? It's not all the time. There's a delayed engagement. I didn't even realize it was doing that because it does a pretty good job of it. But that thing is constantly disconnecting and connecting that clutch right there. Check this out. So I'm still in i4wheel drive. I hit the override, which means this switch does nothing. It just locks it in solid. Now, boom, no delayed engagement. It's just locked. So it really does override it. I thought it was just going to get rid of the I part of it, meaning the brake distribution, but it does more than that. So I thought basically I was going to use it as like the A-track button on a Toyota. When you want your open diff, you have it. When you press it, you get your brake limited slip assist. But it actually does a little bit more than that. It makes sure that it's locked in. So I'm pretty impressed by that. With the portals, you want to be in three-wheel drive most of the time unless you really need that extra help with the brakes. Otherwise, you're going to eat through brake pads and it robs some power because it's trying not to hurt its front brakes when it's doing that thing. So really cool setup. Pretty good mod. It's like 115 bucks or something. Yeah, all you're getting is a switch and some wires and some nice connectors. If you could do it yourself cheaper, sure, but